So what I'm interested in is the practical work of undoing the true causes of our unhappiness, which is the way we are deluded, which means that we adhere to thought patterns that are stressful for us. And I'm going to give you a preview that's not going to mean much to you at all unless you experience it. Every thought that you have that is stressful to you, upon inquiry, will turn out not to be true. When you see that it is not true, you will not be able to believe it anymore. So let me get a simple example. If you have a thought like, I'm a failure. As long as you have that belief, as long as you innocently believe that thought simply because it was conditioned in when you were a child, it's as though that thought is a pair of colored glasses, and you look at yourself, you look at life through these colored glasses, and guess what you'll see? You'll see proof that you're a failure everywhere, and it will look like absolutely unshakable proof. So you look at it and say, oh my God, it's just terrible, and here I did this wrong, and here I did that wrong, and it's just true, I'm a failure. There's all this proof. But if you had and you don't know you have these glasses on, because perhaps you've looked at the world like this since you were 6. But if somebody showed you how you and no one else, only you, can actually notice that you're wearing a pair of colored glasses and take them off, suddenly your experience of yourself and the world will be radically different. Because that belief of I'm a failure will be gone. And once you see the truth of that, that thought may still come. See, that's the funny thing. Thoughts just come. But you look at it and you'll say, oh yeah, I used to believe that. And you are free. This is what has a funny title. It's called the Judge-Your-Neighbor Worksheet. Now, let me explain why that title. For thousands of years, our mothers have told us, or have told their children on this planet, well, little one, you shouldn't judge anyone. You shouldn't judge people. And what did the little people do? They looked up at mommy and said, okay, mommy, I won't judge people. And then they grew up, and what did they do?
Judge people.
They judge people. And that's what we all do. And we can't stop it, because the mind just does it. You know, he's too fat, he's too skinny, I'm better than him, I'm worse than him. On and on and on, all day long. And then throw in situations like I don't have enough money, or, you know, whatever else doesn't work, right? So we judge all the time. That's what we do best. So after a few thousand years of trial and error, somebody, Katie, finally came across the idea, the brilliant idea, that if you've done something a few thousand years and it's never worked, it might be good to do something else. And that's why she called this the Judge-Your-Neighbor Worksheet. So here your job is to judge your neighbor, because you already are. It's already what the mind does, so there's nothing new to that. What's new is that for once we don't tell ourselves we shouldn't be doing it. We realize we are doing it, and now we're dealing with it intelligently, because we do know that it's not helpful, it causes stress. So now we're going to do something to stop the stress, right? And the first thing we need to do is capture those thoughts, because why? The mind is as fast as anything. You can go from where you're sitting right now to the edge of the universe in the blink of an eye. There's nothing faster than the mind. And the mind has its habits. And like anything that has a habit, it wants to keep the habit. So if you think you're not good enough, or nobody loves you, or someone cheated and stole from you, or life is hard and then you die, then you're going to be stuck with these thoughts unless you do something to identify them, and that means write them down and then treat them with this method of inquiry, to question them and why? Not to manipulate your reality, but to find a deeper truth. And it's that truth that we find sets us free. So then what do we do with that? We begin inquiry. We question that thought. So what we do is we use the mind to clear the mind. And it's done in this way. We ask 4 questions of that thought. I'm going to use John lied to me as an example, right? We're going to ask 4 questions of that thought and then do a process called the turnarounds. The whole thing is very simple. By the end of this day, you'll have a good understanding of how this works. John lied to me. First question. And you can see them at the bottom of the sheet, of the worksheet. Is that true? Yes or no? So let's say you come up with a yes. Next question. Can you absolutely be certain that it's true that John lied to you? And again, we just look for a yes or no here. Right? Third question. How do you react? What happens when you believe that John lied to you? Now you want to go into depth. Now what you do is you enter the scenario of what happens inside of you when you attach yourself to this particular belief. What happens when you believe John lied to you? Right? You go into depth. There's a whole number of sub-questions we can ask to help you to really flesh this out, because we want to see what goes on. That's the first part. We need to see what goes on when you believe that thought. That leads us to the 4th question. Who would I be without that thought? So you picture yourself with meeting John. You just know what that would be like with the thought. You're like ready to wring his neck. But now you ask yourself, what would it be like without that thought? Who would I be without that thought in that moment? Okay, you give yourself that impression. And then we take it a step further. So what we've just done is we have given the mind an education about that thought, what happens around that thought. Now we go a step further. We go to the turnarounds. The turnarounds are similar thoughts that we arrive at by changing our original stressful thought in some predictable, simple ways. So here I'll just walk you through the turnarounds for the thought, John lied to me, right? One turnaround would be where we take John out of this and we put you in there. So it would say, I lied to me. Well, have you ever lied to you? Right? So now your task is to see if you can find 3 pieces of evidence that show you that that turnaround is true. So give yourself 3 concrete examples of how you've lied to you. Okay? The next turnaround would be, I lied to John. Well, have you ever lied to John? See if you can come up with 3 concrete examples for that. You know, this is not make-believe, positive thinking. This is concrete stuff. Because we have in our minds a truth detector, sometimes also known as a bullshit detector. We will not believe something that we don't know to be true. But if you find at least one example where at one point you lied to John too, and then there's a third turnaround, and it is the opposite. So the opposite to John lied to me is John didn't lie to me. Well, was that ever the case? Has he ever spoken the truth? That's the first place I would look. You know, you have been friends with John for 10 years, now you haven't seen him for 3 years because he lied to you, right? In those 10 years, many times he told you the truth. So that's the first place I would go. But then I would also go to that particular incident that you're so upset about and ask yourself about that incident. John didn't lie to me. Is that possible? Is that true in some way? And you may find it or you may not find it. Now, this is all a little theoretical right now. It'll become practical when you hear it in action. The trick with the turnarounds is they may at first appear like, well, of course not, that's totally untrue. So just become still and stay with the question. Stay with trying to find evidence for the truth of the turnaround, and in that stillness it will show up. If you're still enough, it will come.